What you thought was lost has not been erased. It has been preserved in a way you could not see at the time. Restoration does not always mean returning things exactly as they were. Sometimes it means receiving something greater in place of what was taken. God redeems with intention, not nostalgia. What is coming carries the weight of maturity, wisdom, and depth that only time and endurance could produce. You have mourned seasons you believed were wasted, years that felt unproductive, effort that seemed unnoticed, prayers that went unanswered, but nothing surrendered in faith is ever wasted. Even silence has a purpose when it is part of preparation. God often allows waiting so that desire can deepen and dependence can shift from outcomes to trust. Restoration begins internally before it becomes visible. Confidence that was shaken is being rebuilt. Identity that was questioned is being clarified. Strength that was depleted is being renewed. You are not returning to who you were. You are stepping into who you have become through endurance. What was once fragile is now grounded. Manifestation does not arrive abruptly without foundation. It unfolds when readiness meets timing. What you are about to see externally is the result of work that has already been done internally. That is why this season feels different. There is a steadiness in you now that did not exist before. A discernment you earned through difficulty. A resilience shaped by survival. The prayers you whispered privately carry weight in this moment. God responds not just to words, but to posture. He remembers sincerity, consistency, and faithfulness when no one was watching. Public outcomes often grow from private obedience. What you see emerging soon is rooted in what you did when recognition was absent. You were chosen not because you were flawless, but because you were faithful. Endurance qualifies where talent alone cannot. You stayed when leaving would have been easier. You trusted when answers were scarce. You obeyed even when results were delayed. That faithfulness has positioned you for restoration that is not fragile or temporary. Manifestation also brings responsibility. What is being restored will require stewardship. God is not just giving back, He is entrusting you with more. That is why this process took time. Capacity had to be expanded. Character had to be refined. Vision had to mature. What you are stepping into now will require wisdom, not just excitement. Do not underestimate what is unfolding simply because it arrives quietly. Some of the most significant shifts come without announcement. Peace replaces anxiety. Direction replaces confusion. Momentum replaces stagnation. These are signs of restoration in motion. What you are about to experience will make sense of what you endured, not because pain was necessary, but because growth was. God does not minimize suffering, but He maximizes purpose. He does not rush healing, but He completes it. You are not starting over. You are starting from experience. You are not behind. You are positioned. What is unfolding now is not a consolation prize. It is fulfillment shaped by endurance, refined by obedience, and sustained by faith. What comes next will not just bless you, it will validate the journey that brought you here. While you may feel as though nothing is happening, there is constant movement beyond what your eyes can see. Silence does not mean inactivity. Stillness does not mean absence. God often works most powerfully in places you are not invited to observe. What appears delayed on the surface is being carefully arranged beneath it, piece by piece, conversation by conversation, moment by moment. There are doors you could never open on your own, no matter how qualified or prepared you are. That is why God handles them privately. He speaks to hearts you cannot reach, shifts perspectives you cannot influence, and creates opportunities you could never negotiate. You may think your progress depends on your effort, but in this season, it depends on alignment. What is meant for you will not require manipulation or chasing. Right now, people are being positioned who don't even know your name yet. Decisions are being made that will intersect with your life at the exact moment they need to. Delays you once resented are actually protecting the timing of those alignments. If things had moved faster, you would have arrived before the room was ready to receive you. God is also rearranging environments. Some spaces you wanted access to were not safe for the version of you that existed then. Others lacked the capacity to support what you carry. So he closed doors quietly without explanation so he could open the right ones with impact. What feels like rejection was often redirection you did not recognize at the time. There are conversations happening behind closed doors that include your name in ways you never imagined. Favor is being discussed where you are not present. That is intentional. When God orchestrates promotion, it does not depend on self-promotion. You are being spoken about by people who have authority, influence, and access without you having to announce yourself. Timing matters more than speed. God is not interested in rushing you into spaces you are not equipped to remain in. He is interested in sustainability, not just arrival. That is why preparation and alignment happen together. When the door opens, you will not need to convince anyone why you belong there. The environment will already be prepared for your presence. This season also involves separation from connections that no longer fit your assignment. Not everyone who walked with you can walk where you are going. Some relationships were seasonal, not permanent. God is creating room for new connections by slowly loosening old attachments. It may feel uncomfortable, but it is necessary to make space for what is next. Even what seems small right now is connected to something larger. A brief conversation, a delayed response, an unexpected pause. Nothing is wasted. God uses ordinary moments to build extraordinary outcomes. What feels insignificant today may be the very thing that positions you tomorrow. Trust is required because you cannot monitor the process. Faith grows when control is released. God is asking you to believe that he is arranging outcomes beyond your visibility. You are not being forgotten. You are being positioned. When the shift happens, it will feel sudden to you, but it will have been in motion for far longer than you realized. And you will look back and understand that every delay, every closed door, every unanswered question was part of a larger alignment that had your future in mind. While you may feel as though nothing is happening, there is constant movement beyond what your eyes can see. Silence does not mean inactivity. Stillness does not mean absence. God often works most powerfully in places you are not invited to observe. What appears delayed on the surface is being carefully arranged beneath it, piece by piece, conversation by conversation, moment by moment. What you have been experiencing is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is evidence that something is being formed within you. The pressure, the resistance, the unexpected delays have made you question yourself, but they were never meant to disqualify you. They were designed to shape you. There is a difference between punishment and preparation often feels harsher because it is purposeful. God does not waste pain, and He does not allow pressure without intention. You may have asked yourself why life suddenly became heavier when you decided to do better, believe deeper, or move forward. That is not coincidence. Growth always attracts resistance. When gold is refined, it is not polished gently. It is exposed to intense heat so that impurities can rise to the surface and be removed. What feels uncomfortable now is revealing what cannot go with you into the next season. Isolation has been one of the hardest parts. People who once understood you no longer seem to connect with you. Conversations feel shallow. Support feels distant. This is not rejection, it is separation. God often removes familiar voices so His voice can become clearer. When too many opinions surround you, discernment becomes difficult. Silence, though uncomfortable, creates space for instruction. Delays have also tested your faith. You prayed, you prepared, you stayed consistent, yet the results didn't arrive on your timeline. It made you wonder if you heard God correctly or if you made a mistake somewhere along the way. But delay does not mean denial. Sometimes God holds back the outcome to strengthen your character before He expands your capacity. What you are asking for requires a version of you that can sustain it. There were moments when you felt overlooked, even invisible. Others advanced while you stayed in the same place. That comparison drained your joy and tempted you to rush the process, but preparation happens in private before it is revealed in public. What looks like stagnation is often internal construction. Foundations are being reinforced where no one can see. You have also been confronted with yourself. Old habits resurfaced, emotional wounds reopened, weak areas were exposed. That was not regression, that was revelation. God exposes what needs healing before elevation. He does not promote what is untreated, because elevation magnifies everything, strengths and flaws alike. The pressure you feel is not meant to crush you, but to clarify you. Under pressure, priorities become clear. Under pressure, distractions lose their appeal. Under pressure, you discover what truly matters. God uses pressure to teach discernment, endurance, and dependence, not on people, not on systems, but on Him alone. If this were punishment, you would feel abandoned. Instead, even in the struggle, there has been guidance, restraint, and unexpected protection. Things that could have destroyed you didn't. Doors that would have harmed you stayed closed. Strength showed up when you thought you had none left. That is not judgment, that is supervision. Preparation often feels unfair because it demands more from you than from others. But your assignment is different. What you are being prepared for carries weight, influence, and responsibility. God trains deeply those He intends to trust greatly. You are not being singled out for suffering. You are being set apart for purpose. So do not interpret the struggle as failure. Do not mistake the refining for rejection. This season is doing something in you that comfort never could. And when the time comes for the next door to open, you will realize that everything you endured was not random, it was necessary. The reason the noise has increased around you is because something significant is about to happen. Opposition does not rise without cause. Confusion does not suddenly intensify without reason. When you notice resistance growing louder just as you are trying to move forward, it is often a sign that you are approaching a turning point. Breakthroughs are rarely silent. They are preceded by disruption, distraction, and doubt meant to slow you down at the last moment. You may have felt mentally scattered, emotionally drained, or spiritually overwhelmed for no clear reason. Thoughts you already overcame tried to return. Fears you thought were buried resurfaced. This is not because you are weak, it is because the pressure is strategic. When progress is close, the enemy's goal is not always to stop you outright, but to exhaust you enough that you stop yourself. Notice how the struggle has shifted. It is no longer about survival, it is about discouragement. You are not fighting to stay alive, you are fighting to stay focused. That shift matters. It means you have already passed the most dangerous phase. The battle now is over clarity, consistency, and confidence, because those are the tools that carry you into the next level. Breakthrough does not always announce itself with excitement. Sometimes it approaches quietly while chaos tries to steal your attention. That is why discernment is critical in this season. Not every urgent feeling deserves a response. Not every loud voice deserves your energy. You must learn to recognize when noise is a distraction designed to pull you away from what is unfolding. You may feel tempted to second-guess decisions you already made in faith, to reopen doors God already closed, to return to familiar ground just to feel stable again. But stability without growth is stagnation. The discomfort you feel now is not a warning to retreat, it is a signal to stay steady. There is a reason the opposition feels personal. What is ahead is personal. The impact of your breakthrough goes beyond you. It affects the people connected to your obedience, the environment you are called to influence, and the assignments waiting on your arrival. When what is coming carries reach, resistance increases in proportion. Pay attention to how close you are. Breakthroughs are often nearest when quitting feels most reasonable. The mind begins to negotiate exits when endurance is almost complete. That is why this season requires resolve, not emotion-driven decisions, not reactionary moves, but disciplined faith that continues even when feelings fluctuate. Clarity is coming, the fog will lift, the questions that have lingered will begin to make sense. But clarity usually follows commitment, not comfort. You don't wait until everything feels clear to move forward. You move forward and clarity meets you in motion. The noise will not last. It cannot. Distraction has an expiration date. Opposition has limits. But what is being established through your persistence will outlive this season. Every time you choose focus over fear, alignment over anxiety, you weaken the power of the resistance trying to slow you down. So do not interpret the noise as defeat. It is evidence of proximity. You are closer than you realize. And the fact that you are still standing, still moving, still listening means the breakthrough is not just possible, it is approaching. This season is demanding a response from you, not later, not when things feel safer, but now. What God is asking of you cannot be postponed without consequence. Immediate obedience is not about pressure, it is about precision. Timing matters, and delayed movement can cause misalignment. You are not being asked to understand everything. You are being asked to trust enough to move. Obedience becomes difficult when clarity feels incomplete. You want assurance before action, confirmation before commitment. But faith does not operate on full visibility, it operates on trust. God rarely gives the entire map because dependence would be replaced by control. Each step is revealed only after the previous one is taken. Waiting for certainty can quietly turn into resistance. There are instructions you have already sensed but hesitated to follow, not because they were unclear, but because they were uncomfortable. Obedience often requires letting go of what feels familiar, logical, or emotionally safe. God is not just directing your steps, He is reshaping your posture. What worked in a previous season may not work now, and holding onto it can slow your progress. Fear disguises itself as wisdom in moments like this. It tells you to be cautious, to wait, to gather more information, but discernment recognizes when hesitation is rooted in fear rather than insight. Obedience does not ignore wisdom, but it refuses to be ruled by fear. When God speaks, delay becomes a decision of its own. This season also requires releasing habits and mindsets that once served you, but now limit you. You cannot carry old coping mechanisms into a new calling. Patterns formed in survival mode will not sustain you in expansion. God is calling for surrender, not because He wants control, but because divided loyalty weakens impact. Obedience is costly because it demands alignment, not convenience. It may strain relationships, challenge routines, and disrupt plans you worked hard to build. But partial obedience still produces incomplete outcomes. God does not respond to intention, He responds to action. What you do next carries more weight than what you feel. Immediate obedience also sharpens discernment. The more you respond promptly, the clearer the next instruction becomes. Delay clouds clarity, movement invites direction. When you step in obedience, confirmation follows, not before. That is why this moment matters. What feels like a small step now unlocks a sequence you cannot yet see. You are not being asked to perform perfectly, only to respond faithfully. Obedience is not about earning favor, it is about staying aligned. God already knows your limitations. He accounts for weakness. What He cannot work with is refusal masked as waiting. There is urgency because opportunity has a window. Not everything remains open indefinitely. God's patience is endless, but seasons are not. When He calls for movement, it is because conditions are aligned. What is available now may not remain accessible later in the same way. This is not the time to negotiate instructions. This is the time to move with humility and courage. Obedience positions you where provision flows, protection follows alignment, clarity follows commitment, and peace follows surrender. What you do next is not just a step, it is a signal that you trust God more than comfort, more than familiarity, more than fear, and that response will shape everything that follows. This is not a random moment, and this is not a message you simply stumbled upon. There are countless voices speaking every day, countless sounds competing for your attention, yet somehow you are here listening to this now. That alone should tell you something. When God wants to speak, He knows how to get your attention without forcing it. He knows how to reach you in the middle of your routine, your scrolling, your exhaustion, your doubt. This is a divine interruption, and interruptions from heaven are never accidental. You may have thought you clicked on this out of curiosity, boredom, or habit, but there is a deeper reason. God often speaks when we least expect it, because expectation can sometimes block obedience. When you are prepared for a voice, you may argue with it. When you are caught off guard, you listen. That is why this moment matters. Haven is breaking into your normal flow to deliver something urgent, something personal, something meant specifically for you. There have been signs leading up to this moment, repeated thoughts that wouldn't leave you alone, questions stirring in your spirit without clear answers, a restlessness that sleep could not cure. You tried to ignore it, tried to stay busy, tried to drown it out with noise, but it kept returning. That wasn't anxiety. That wasn't imagination. That was as a signal. God was preparing you to hear what He is saying now. Divine interruptions often arrive when you are tired of being strong. They show up when you've done everything you know how to do and still feel stuck. God interrupts not to confuse you, but to realign you. He interrupts when you've been walking in one direction long enough and it's time to adjust your course. He interrupts when your prayers are about to be answered in a way you didn't expect. Understand this clearly. If this message were not for you, it would not hold your attention. Your spirit recognizes what your mind is still trying to process. That pull you feel, that sense of this feels different, is confirmation. God knows how to speak a language your soul understands, even when your circumstances don't make sense. Many people miss divine moments because they are waiting for dramatic signs, thunder, visions, overwhelming emotions. But often God speaks through a quiet urgency, a simple knowing, a pause that demands attention. Right now, heaven is saying, listen closely, not halfway, not distracted, fully present, because what is being communicated is connected to where you are going next. This interruption is also protection. There are choices ahead of you that look harmless but carry long-term consequences. There are paths that seem safe but will delay your purpose. God interrupts before damage is done, before you settle for less than what was promised. Sometimes the warning comes before the blessing because preservation matters just as much as promotion. You are not late. You are not behind. You have not missed your chance. This moment proves that timing is still working in your favor. God does not speak urgently unless something important is at stake. And He does not call for immediate attention unless the next step matters deeply. So do not brush this off. Do not treat this as just another motivational message. This is a checkpoint, a spiritual pause, a moment where heaven leans in and says, pay attention now, because what you do with this moment will affect what happens next.